else knows when they're on. Great.
I'm just gonna find she starts telling me that. So anyway, folks, okay, we'll get going, and I just want to welcome you all along today. Delighted, absolutely delighted to host this special launch of Maeve O'Sullivan's new collection of haiku, Wasp on the Prayer Flag. This is the first, I suppose, event we've had since lockdown has ended, and we're sort of live in person with Maeve, and live with all of you both on Zoom and to our YouTube audience today. I'd like to welcome you. So you didn't come to hear me today, and I'm going to hand you straight over to Kim Richardson from Alba Publishing, who is, of course, Maeve's publisher. So thank you very much, and over to you, Kim.
Thank you, Karen. Thanks, Kerry, to Kerry Writers Museum for hosting this unusual and unique launch event, where I'm used to launching books, Alba Publishing books, in the congenial surroundings of the Teachers Club in Dublin. So this is a new event, but anyway, wonderful to have a home for the launch. And I'd like to welcome all of your YouTube viewers and Zoomers to the launch of Maeve's. I count it that it's the 5th and a half collection with Alba Publishing, the half being a joint collection that Maeve and I published, which was actually Alba's first book in 2005, called Double Rainbow. But since then, I published 5 full collections. This is now the 5th full collection of both long form poetry and haiku. So to provide some background, we have always dedicated a proportion of the profits from sales of books to a charity. And this time the charity is Azrael Mongolia. And to talk a little bit about this is Frank Conway from the charity. Frank, over to you.
Kim, thank you very much. And Maeve and Kim, thank you both very, very much on behalf of Azrael NGO. It's an extraordinarily generous gesture, and we're hugely grateful for it. I just wanted to say, I think that A Wasp on a Prayer Flag is a really inspirational title, as well as the work it contains and so on. I just couldn't help. I found, I hope you're seeing this, sorry about this now. Yes. These are just some prayer flags in Champlain. And just to say about prayer flags, because this is what's on the cover of the collection, is that they're covered with mantras. The Tibetans hang them in high places and believe that the prayers will be blown by the wind to spread goodwill and compassion into all pervading spaces, and they're thought to bring benefit to everyone. And they say that as the wind passes over the surface of the flags, the air is purified and sanctified by the mantras. And for me, this image is a perfect symbol of Maeve and the collection of her beautiful work, this really generous wish to support Azrael and Mongolia through her poetry. It's been spread by a different kind of air today and into the future on the internet, bringing benefit, hopefully, to many people, those who read the poems, but also adding the value of those who will benefit from them, particularly vulnerable children in Mongolia. So 30 years ago, this is Mongolia. It's sandwiched between Russia at the top and China at the bottom. It's been invaded by both in its checkered history. 30 years ago, when the Soviet Union collapsed, the entire economy in Mongolia collapsed with it. It was being held, it was held by the Soviet Union. And so it was very suddenly, overnight, like dramatically just fell into horrendous poverty, having had full unemployment, full healthcare system, full education. It just bottomed out. And, you know, as a result, it ended up that there was something like 30,000 people every year moved from the countryside into the city. And what you're looking at here is a vast shanty area. It was all around, which is right there in the distance in the middle. a sprawling city of people with no work, no employment, no money, trying to survive, as I said, very, very suddenly. And a third of the entire population of Mongolia now live in this shanty area. And most of them are children. And the tough thing about Mongolia is that it has these incredibly severe winters. It is unimaginably cold. And I was trying to figure out how to convey how cold it is when they say that, like, typically a fridge should be around 3 degrees. A freezer should be around -8 or 9 degrees, or 18 maybe degrees. These temperatures go to -40 degrees and sometimes to -50. And so they are trying to survive in those kind of tents. This is just to show you a little bit of what the children have to do just to get water. They travel down to this kind of very hilly terrain and then have to get it back up to their the gears, they're called. Traditional Mongolian tents are called gears. And so this is a typical gear. You can see it's in very rough state, and these two children, Eileen and her brother Inkar, are living in it with their mother. Their father is dead. The mother is disabled, unable to work. The tent is leaking. It can't hold the heat. They have to share their clothes in the winter. They have just one pair of shoes. You can see that Eileen is wearing a pair of reasonable shoes and her brother has a pair of flip-flops. So when it gets that cold, they have to share each other's shoes. It's how cold it is. And also pollution is very, very high because they're burning anything they can. And this is just a short little sort of indication of the kind of life there. It's heavily polluted. I mean, it's one of the most polluted cities in the world. It is the coldest capital in the world. And there they both are having some dried biscuits for their breakfast. And they're heading out now to get some water. To collect the water, they have to walk long, long distances to get to that place and then haul the water back. And then they'll forage for firewood, although usually it's things like car tires and rubbish and whatever they can find to put into the stoves. And then the stoves themselves are a danger because when the parents aren't there, a lot of children get burnt just through not being. You can see they're always held right in the center of the gears. So Eileen and Inkar, these would be typical of the children that we support in Mongolia. And then what we try to do to help them. We're an award-winning NGO. It was founded by Panchayoti Rinpoche in 2001 when he encountered the dreadful poverty that he saw there. He tried to set up some system to try and help them. His approach was to protect the family, and by protecting the family, to protect the children. And so, you know, our aim is to eradicate poverty. We have a children's sponsorship program, which you'll find on our website. 14 euros a month will go an amazingly far way to support a child in Mongolia. And these are some of our projects. They're affected now, of course, by COVID. There was very limited numbers of cases in Mongolia. Up until November, we had only 350 cases during the entire time, but recently it's shot up to 2,000 to 3,000 a day now at the moment. Our work is supported by His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, who has funded us significantly when we've had difficult times over the last number of years. He's also visited our centre. We've also been supported by Irish Aid, the Dutch, German, Canadian governments, and now supported by Maeve O'Sullivan. And for me, having looked to her work, there was just one particular one that struck a very strong chord with me, and for me it summed up who she is and her compassion and her generosity and your big heart, Maeve. And if I may quote it, because I loved it, 10 years since Dad died, I helped an old man to cross the icy road. I don't quite understand how that works, but those lines really moved me hugely. So I think the collection of poetry is supporting these wonderful children, and I'm appealing to people to buy it, not just because you'll have the wonderful thing of the poetry to read, but because you'll also be helping people a very long way away. And you will enjoy these very, very insightful, beautiful, evocative works, some of them quite haunting. And so thank you. And a huge, huge, huge gratitude from us all in Mongolia. That's our website if you're interested in seeing a bit more about us and what we're doing. And I wish you the very, very, very best of luck with the book, and I hope you sell thousands and thousands of them.
Thank you, Frank, so much for that good, thorough view of the wonderful work that you do in Mongolia. I've heard also, I have friends from Mongolia and I know through them that things are really rough. And Ulaanbaatar is the most polluted capital in the world. The thought of minus 40 in the winter is unimaginable.
Yeah.
So thank you for that, and we really hope that whatever we're able to raise, we know is going to an extremely good cause.
Thank you.
So now
Thank you very much, Ken. Yeah.
we turn to the first of our musical offerings in this launch, and Neil Brosnan, who is a Listowel native and a man of many talents, an award-winning short story writer, songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, could try saying that after a couple of pints, and composer. And is going to give us a couple of tunes on the accordion, I believe. And I shall leave you, Neil, to introduce the tunes that you're going to play. Thank you in anticipation.
Thank you, Ken. And if you stumble over multi-instrumentalist, I very much stumble over this instrument, because it's the family instrument of which I have failed for 6 decades, and I've recently decided to have another go at it. And I can't play the tunes everybody else plays, so I decided to write some tunes that nobody else knew, so my mistakes wouldn't be so obvious. So the first one is very much a Listowel tune. It's about a little place about 200 yards away from where I'm sitting. It's called Bohrin Dove, and Bohrin Dove was the passage between the famine workhouse on the Ballybunion Road and the Trampoline Bawn famine cemetery. So a couple of years ago, when walking along the sidewalk, I happened upon this place, and the idea of this tune was haunting me for some time. So last year I tried to pin it down. So here goes. Now I went from Trampoline Bawn into Maeve's polka. Yes, that Maeve, which I composed about 15 years ago. Bless you. Now, it's my great pleasure to introduce somebody much more important than my good self, which I hate saying, but there you go. And this lady needs little introduction in the world of poetry and beyond. She hails from the birthplace of my paternal grandmother, Scarlett Lynn, in the heart of Slieve Lucra. And the influence of that area's traditional culture is woven through all three of her collections. Song of the Midnight Fox and Down the Sunlit Hall were both published by Dock House. And her most recent collection, The Narrow Way of Souls, comes from Salmon Poetry. To me, her verses ring of truth, honesty, and an almost savage empathy, and have to be experienced to be appreciated. I'm sure today's second level students are much the richer for the presence of her work on their Leaving Cert syllabus. Folks, it's an honour and a privilege to give you Eileen Sheehan, who will now introduce Maeve O'Sullivan's latest collection of haiku and senru. Wasp on the prayer flag. Eileen.
Thanks so much, Neil, for such a wonderful introduction. But today isn't about me, it's about Maeve and about her wonderful achievement today. But that's very much appreciated. We'll have to catch up on our Scatterglen connections another time. I didn't know that. For those of you watching live, or for those of you who might watch the recording afterwards and maybe aren't familiar with Maeve's work, I'll just give you a very brief little biog of her. Maeve is from Dublin. She was born there and still lives and works there. She writes, we call long form or mainstream poetry, as well as haiku in all its related forms. And she has been widely published, anthologized and translated. A list much too long to go through, but it includes, you know, the Irish Times, the Stinging Fly, the Honest Ulsterman, as well as all the major haiku journals such as Frog Pond, Hedgerow, and Modern Haiku. She's been a winner of the Brendan Kennelly Poetry Award and also the Listowel Writers' Week Poetry Competition, as well as the Haiku Museum of Literature Award. She's a tutor in a college of higher education in Dublin, and among other things, she teaches English, journalism, public relations, and professional skills and development. She's well known in Ireland and beyond, I'm sure, as a facilitator of haiku workshops and all short form poetry and haiku. She has facilitated for festivals such as Drumineer Literary Festival, but also for the Irish Writers' Centre and Anamcara Writers and Artists Retreat in West Cork. And she's currently on the panel as well for as a tutor with Words Ireland. So, but today we're here to launch her latest collection, which I was going to introduce as her fifth, but now I know it's her fifth and a half, thanks to Kim. And Frank alluded earlier to the cover, and it's really lovely if you can get a look at it there. If it's not too shining off my light. It's lovely to be here to launch it, and thank you, Maeve and Kim, for inviting me to do so. Things in this COVID times don't work out often as we could envisage or plan, but it seems to me that today's launch has a rightness to it. Maeve has very strong familial connections with County Kerry, and actually her grandmother I know was from the Black Valley, which is very close to me here in Killarney. And also, on a personal note, I first met Maeve in Listowel, actually, I think during Listowel Writers' Week about 20 years ago, and I'm probably being kind to both of us in my counting of the years, because it could be more than that. And so it's lovely to me to be here today to celebrate the launch of her new book. And thanks so much to Cara and of course the wonderful Writers' Centre and Writers' Museum in Listowel for hosting us. It's right and proper that we're here today, and I think it's wonderful how fortuitously things work out sometimes. The book, I must praise Kim Richardson and Alba here, because the book is beautifully produced, I would say elegantly designed and produced by Alba Publishing. And the magic in this book for me actually does begin with the cover. And it's rarely I've spent so much time actually just contemplating the cover of a book before I opened it. And again, to give you a glimpse of it while I talk a little bit about the cover. I think rarely has a cover so well represented both the contents of the book, but also the sensibility of the poet who has penned it. The image and the title, Wasp on a Prayer Flag, function almost as a visual poem in itself. The rich blue colour symbolises, of course, the realms of the sky and the heavens. The wasp in Celtic lore is considered a messenger from the muse, from the goddess of poetry. In common with all pollinators, the wasp is seen as a harbinger of inspiration, a creature that sort of announces a great period of active creativity for those they visit. Also on the cover, the overall blue is the prayer flag, and embedded in that is the image of the wind horse. Now this is a creature, another mythical association, and it's a creature who has its roots in Tibetan mythology, but has been adapted into Buddhist teachings. The wind horse combines, as we would imagine, the speed of the wind with the power of the horse. It's a creature who bestows wellness and good fortune wherever the wind blows, and on everyone who is touched by that wind. Prayer flags belong to the element of air, the element of the sky, because they display sacred symbols. They should never be placed on the floor or the ground. And I think it's true to say that this grace is also embedded in this book, and maybe we should respect that tradition as well, in keeping with the actual physical object of the book. The collection contains haiku and sinaru and is divided into 5 sections, each poem bearing witness to moments of epiphany and human connection. In the tradition of Basho, the book leads us on multiple and varied journeys, travels through the landscape of Ireland as well as further afield. The vivid imagery leads us into experiencing the world from continually shifting perspectives. And this is the real treasure in this book. We are led from wide-angled view down to acutely observed minuscules. So, for example, we can be given a picture of the migratory Brent geese flying above a racetrack with all the implications of the long journey they've completed, down to the little tiny miniature of a wasp traveling across somebody's lifeline. And all journeys carry the same import and importance. Any readers and practitioners of haiku might be aware of maybe a problem with haiku, which can be a problem which is referred to as convergence. Because haiku are grounded in observance of the natural world, and because also they entail the use of kigo or season words. The danger is we can all start sounding a little bit the same. So because we all write about the new moon and the harvest moon and the full moon and the first daffodils and the spring blossoms, Maeve always really skillfully avoids this pitfall in her writing. And this is, they're actually, I think, two very distinctive traits in Maeve's writing, which I'm going to pick on now, just to illustrate how Maeve's writing is so uniquely hers. And of course, that comes from her own very unique view of the world and how she portrays it in her writing. First thing is that she very confidently and unapologetically, I would say, populates her poems with distinct references to Irish culture and even sometimes the Irish language. And across the different sets of haiku and cinero, you'll find references to Flann O'Brien's Snug, Clonmore Turlock, Synge's masterpiece, Pucheen, of all things. And Mr. Tato even makes an appearance, smiling up at us from a discarded crisp packet. In a haiku from the sequence, which is titled Kerry Dreamtime, not only references the Kerry poet and philosopher, the late John Moriarty, in its title, but it is obviously set on Bale Strand on the Shannon estuary, as we are told. This beach's name means mouth. What I love in Maeve's work as well is that she sometimes takes a very unique and sideways look at the world. And this is particularly evident in her cinero. And they result in a wise and often self-deprecating humour. The penultimate section of the book is titled Home Sweet Home. And this is where the world traveller has returned to her home in Dublin and is settling back into life in her 4th floor apartment. This section actually contains one of my favourite cinero from the book. And I think it perfectly combines that feeling of maybe travel weariness you might have when you return from your long period of traveling, but also that wonderful feeling of total relaxation and comfort when you reach home again. And when you're back at home in your own space. Midnight, Friday, I fall asleep on the couch. Don't know who done it. And I think I just love things like that in Maeve because she catches that little, I mean, how many of us haven't fallen asleep in front of Netflix and woken up going, oh, who done it? I would say in conclusion that I feel this book is a must read and a must have for any practitioners of haiku and all the related forms, because it embodies so many varieties of approaches. There's a lot to be learned in there for anyone who is writing haiku or learning the art of writing haiku. But it's a very difficult time for publishers and for artists, as well as for everyone, of course. So please go out, buy the book, and support the wonderful endeavours here of Kim and Alba Publishing, and of course of Maeve. And also, as we heard earlier from Frank, the wonderful donations that are going to the charity. So it's a book that's really well worth supporting, and I'll be dipping back into it. It's one of those books that you read once, but you keep it by your side for quite a while because you keep dipping back in and going, what was that one again? So it's that lovely little enlightening book that's for dipping into over time. It's available to buy directly from Maeve, and I'm sure you'll get a lovely signed copy directly from Maeve's website, which is maeveosullivan.com. and you'll find all about Maeve and her other writings on that as well. So thanks again for inviting me, and it's been wonderful here. And I think now we have to go over to Maeve herself. So thank you. I'm looking forward to hear Maeve reading from the book.
Thank you very much, Eileen. Am I on? I'm on camera now, I think. Yeah, great. No, thank you very much, Eileen. That was a beautiful introduction, and it's always lovely to. I mean, it's lovely to hear other people's views of your work, because I mean, as poets, we're writing away, and you have your own views of different poems, and it's lovely to hear different perspectives, and also to Frank as well for his perspective on it as well. So thank you very much, Eileen. It's great to be here in Listowel. I'm delighted. I'm on Zoom, but I'm delighted not to be in my sitting room on Zoom, because I've been there for months and months for several hours a day. So it's fantastic. I'm looking out on the square here in Listowel. There's some beautiful flowers behind me, which were sent here by Nessa and Peter. So thank you very much for those. It was a very thoughtful gesture. And thanks to everybody who's tuned in from different places, and also hi to those of you who will watch back later. So I have also in person here, we have a few people in person, including my cousins from Tralee, Paula and Mary O'Sullivan from Tralee. So I'm delighted that they're here as well. And just while I think of cousins, I want to say happy birthday to our cousin Paula O'Callaghan. It's her birthday today, so she's listening in tuned in Dunleary or Blackrock. So happy birthday, Paula. So I'm going to read from the book. What we're going to do is Brenda, our lovely second musician, and thanks to Neil for the beautiful tunes earlier. They're absolutely gorgeous. And our second musician is Brenda Malloy. And Brenda and I are going to intersperse the haiku with tunes. So we've sort of picked out tunes that will kind of go along with the work. So if I can just tell you a little bit about Brenda. She is a Dubliner as well, like myself, and she's an Irish musician. She plays a number of different types of harp: early Irish harp, Renaissance harp, the arpa doppia, which is an Italian one, modern Irish harps, and also the Renaissance 8-course lute. So she has been involved in 3 CDs, and one of which is her own solo one. It's called Irish Renaissance. So she has her own website, which is sheofviog.com. So somebody, either Brenda or someone else, might type that in later on, SITHEBHEAG.com. So her CD is available to buy there. So Breda, we're going to intersperse the tunes with the haiku, and then Breda is going to back announce the tunes. So we'll go straight from haiku into the tune, into each set of tunes, and then Brenda will back announce the tunes. So I'm going to start with little cliched, but I'm going to start by reading the summer haiku sequence, because we're in summer and we've lovely sunshine here today in Kerry, and I think other places too. So I'm just going to go straight in. I don't think anything really needs any explanation. Some of the names you'll hear are names of butterflies. Summer. This is from the first section of the book. On the back road to the west coast, a field of yellow irises. The pier wall warm against my bare calves. June sunset. Dry month, swifts flying over the diminished rapids. After 4 hours in the car, roadside fuchsia. Below the waterfall, on a butterbur leaf, a green-veined white. After the heat wave, a painted lady faded to yellow. Back to the Cascades, blue emperor dragonflies mating on the wing. By the muddy path to the old gravel quarry, wild orchids. Diving otter, damselflies surf his ripples. Picnic basket full, rose garden on the wane. Sun's last rays dappling her wall, thunder moon. Appropriately enough, actually, that one was written on a Zoom call. I've had a few haiku moments actually on Zooms with people's backgrounds and things like that. So the next sequence I'm going to read is, they're all from different counties. By the way, you can kind of guess the Clare, Dublin, Cork, Wicklow, Tipperary. And the next sequence is Summer Jaunts, which is along the similar lines, but it's a mix of haiku and senryu. And these are from counties Clare, Carlow, Tipperary, Cork, and Kerry. So you can guess. Some of them it's obvious which county they are, and others not so obvious. Summer jaunts. Swallows surfing the Atlantic. Men with boards. Beachcombing prize. A small lemon scallop. Her rendition of the witch's speech. A money spider descends. Slower to release its juice. Frozen grape. Stone Jesus, his missing thumb pointing to a show of roses. Swallows sip from the river sure, percolating coffee. Beer al fresco, fuchsia bells quiver in a breeze. Bamboo garden, the red tears of the eucalyptus. Hornhill, a bare-chested farmer waves to an unseen being. And that's the end of that sequence. So Brenda is up next. Thank you, Brenda.
Yeah, that was Moore's poem, of course, The Last Rose of Summer. The tune is taken by Edward Bunting from something that Dennis O'Hussey played at the very last harp festival in Belfast.
Thanks, Brenda, that was lovely. Now I'm going to read a couple of sequences from the second section of the book, and I couldn't really leave out of Dublin sequence. So that this sequence is set in Dublin, and in fact, not just in Dublin, but I think most of them are within my 2K. So these were written during the strict lockdown around last Easter. Easter, which Easter was it? Yeah, Easter 2020. So I don't think anything needs any explanation. This particular sequence is called Holy Week Blessings, and it appeared in a beautiful anthology called Gratitude in the Time of COVID-19, and edited by Scott Mason. And it was a really lovely book, and actually just won first place in the anthology section of the Haiku Society of America Merit Book Awards. So, but what I liked about his approach was that he was taking a positive approach, in as much as you could take a positive approach, obviously with everything, all the terrible things that were going on. But in the sense that we could still remain grateful for what we had, you know, those of us that had our health and had our homes and had, you know, nice parks to walk in and so forth. So, so I'll just read it. It's called Holy Week Blessings. This little moorhen navigating alone, canal walk. News bulletin, I meet him in the park, silent song thrush. Lone purple iris, close to the Liffey's bank, a feeding heron. Good Friday, cerise blossoms softening kelp limestone. Easter Saturday, among the fading daffodils, a holly blue. Star clematis blooms in the memorial gardens, Easter Sunday. And the second sequence I'm going to read is the one that Eileen mentioned, which is Kerry Dreamtime. So I wrote these last summer. Some of them are from North Kerry and some of them are from South Kerry. So I'm keeping both camps happy, except for West Kerry, I suppose. I'm not keeping them happy. But anyway, I'll go ahead and read. I don't think anything needs any explanation. The Feel is the river that flows through Listowel. And then the Skellig Islands, I think most people are familiar with the very famous islands off the coast of South Kerry. Kerry Dreamtime. Swallows dip and sing, on the river Feel, and anglers cast. A speckled wood lands on Japanese knotweed. Do not cut. On the monk's trail, sweep of mountainscape, oyster catchers' cries. Just over the wall from the priory graveyard, a mermaid's purse. Squally uphill hike, mist miraging their contours, Skellig Islands. Estuary swim on a rare sunny day. This beach's name means mouth. Eileen mentioned that one. So the name of the place is Bale, which is the Irish word for mouth, just for anybody who doesn't have Irish. Now I'm going to do something slightly unusual in that I'm going to read somebody else's work at my own launch. The first time I ever visited Listowel was for Writers' Week in 1997. And I was in the company of a wonderful friend of mine called Maeve O'Sullivan. And we were on a Skype to Listowel Writers' Week. We had a ball. And not only did we come to Writers' Week, we stopped off in Kilkenny on the way back and we took in the night at the festival there that a friend of mine was performing at. So we had a right old weekend of it. So Maeve was a dear friend of mine for many, many years. And she passed away about 10 days ago at the age of 91. So she had a fantastic, long and full life as a family woman, a friend, businesswoman, a student, an activist, a feminist, and she was also a poet. And quite fittingly, actually, her obituary appears in the Irish Times today. So anybody who'd like to see that can see that in there or online. And I just thought I really wanted to honour Maeve's memory, and her friendship enriched my life very much, and I will miss her very much. And I wanted to read a couple of poems from her one and only poetry collection, which was called Circling, and was published by Ireland House 5 years ago in 2016. And the first one I'd like to read, they're both quite short, and then Brenda will come in after the second one. So the first one is called Growing Old Disgracefully. There was a time I wrapped the bath towel tightly around me, dressed and undressed under the tent of my nightie, and never wore shiny shoes in case they reflected my knickers. Now, with the nonchalance of age, I sashay from bathroom to bedroom, dressed only in my birthday suit, anoint my body with fragrant oils, and treat myself to scarlet lingerie for my own celebration of Christmas. I have not done it yet, but some night soon, I will hop into bed, like Marilyn, wearing only Chanel No. 5, and my panic button, just in case. The second poem is a more personal one. Maeve wrote it after I was visiting her one weekend. This is going back now about 20 years ago. And we were chatting so much the day I was leaving that I missed the bus that I had planned to get. So I ended up getting the next bus, which was 2 hours later, back to Dublin. So she wrote this poem after that. I don't think it needs any explanation. Common Ground for Maeve. Talk went on and time went on. And then we found that time to go was time gone by. And then we laughed to think that I, your age and age again, should find with you, as women do, our lives to share, some dreams to dare, such length and breadth and depth of common ground to cover.
That was Manon Heron from the Dornan 18th century poem, and then, of course, put to music by Sean O'Riordan in the 20th century.
Thanks very much, Brenda. And Manon Heron is the Irish for Women of Ireland. So Brenda and I actually, we both came up with the same idea at the same time, that this would be the best tune to follow Maeve's poems with, because she was very much a feminist and campaigner for women's rights. The clock is sort of against us, so we had hoped to have time for Q&A, but I don't think we're going to have time for that. So I'm just going to read 2 more sequences from the 3rd section of the book, and then we'll have another tune from Brenda, and Cara will wrap up then. So sorry, we don't have a chance for the Q&A. Just before I read these, so I'd just like to thank everybody that was been involved in the launch today. To thank Cara Trant and her team at Kerry Writers Centre for hosting us. And also thanks to John W. Sexton and John McGrath for helping to make that happen. Thanks to Kim Richardson of Alba for publishing the book and for introducing it today. Thanks to my lovely launcher, Eileen, for her kind words. Thanks to Frank for telling us a little bit more about Astral Mongolia. And thanks to Neil and to Brenda for the beautiful music. So I'm going to read two sequences from the last section of the book. And the last four sections of the book kind of mimic what's been happening, in the sense that there was a wide circle that got smaller and smaller for all of us during the lockdowns. So I have one sequence called Wanderlust, which is my one and only sequence about foreign travel, which is quite the contrast to my last book, which was nearly all about my travels, worldwide travels. So the Wanderlust sequence is followed by one called On the Move, which is just about traveling around Ireland and around Dublin. I'm going to skip those two, and I'm going to read the last two then. The circle is smaller, it's Home Sweet Home. The final section then is Pandemic, but you'll be glad to hear that things open up a little bit at the end, at the very end. Home Sweet Home. New moon, I pluck a silver hair from my brow. Catching the sunlight, silent wind chimes. 30 years of yoga, and still my heels don't floor in downward dog. Even up here on the 4th floor balcony, bee on lavender. Balcony garden, a sprig of parsley falls into a web. Lamb korma, trying to stop the spider walking on the hob. Midnight Friday, I fall asleep on the couch. Don't know who done it. Pandemic. Empty city street, they walk hand in gloved hand, two young men. In separate trees, a pair of magpies, a pair of collared doves. Bored with lockdown, I wear the sandals in which I travelled the world. A doubling of deaths, the clematis buds fatter. My friend tells me more about his cousin's passing. Wasp on the prayer flag. No human hugs for 7 weeks. This silver birch will do. Lifting of lockdown. First glimpse of Dublin Bay.
Carolyn's welcome, of course. A favourite of the Chieftains and lovely Derek Bell, who's gone now as well.
Thanks very much, Brenda. And we over to Cara, who I think is going to wrap things up for us. I think it's just almost 4 o'clock now, so we're on target time-wise.
Forgot to unmute myself. God, where did the time go? That was the quickest hour. I really enjoyed that. And thank you all so much. Some beautiful poetry and music, and absolutely fantastic afternoon. And despite a few technical hiccups at the end, it turned out to be a beautiful event. And thank you, Maeve, so much for allowing us to host your launch. We're absolutely delighted. It's something we'd like to do a lot more of into the future. And I don't know if anybody mentioned where you can actually buy the book. So I know I did include in the description on YouTube the Maeve's website, which is www.maeveosullivan.com. So you can buy it from Maeve's website, and that's Maeve O'Sullivan. And we will, of course, have copies here in the museum. I know we haven't discussed that, but we'll definitely be delighted to have copies for anybody locally that'd like to pick up a copy. And I'm sure they'll be available from all good bookshops. Am I correct in saying that, Maeve?
At the moment, they're in books upstairs, and Alan Hanna's in Dublin and Rathmines just at the moment. But yeah. I think maeveosullivan.com is probably just the easiest, especially if anyone wants a signed copy. I can sign it and post it off.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. So I suppose we have nothing further to say, but just thank you all again, and thank you to everyone who tuned in on YouTube, to our guests here in the museum, and to you all for joining us today. And take care. I always have a habit of saying safe home, well, but we are at home, sort of at home. So yeah, so that's it. And good. Have a lovely rest of the day, Mick. Have a lovely day for the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.